Hi, guys. So, we're getting straight into this episode's tea, meeting you, meeting your shadow, meeting you for real. We would first start off by giving a quick overview of the concept of the shadow self. And then we would look at the three-step process that the inner work has given us to truly examine our shadow self. And we would look at the themes of consciousness. This journey made me understand that it's all you, it's all me. The darkness, the lights, the good side, the shadow side, parts of self I don't even want to think about. I don't even want to remember. I don't even want to hear. All those parts that remind you of rejection of self, that remind you of the parts of you that they took away, right? The parts of you that were not validated enough for you to let them stay. The parts of you that got lost. Now they're replaced, and you have all of these negative thoughts. I had all of these negative thoughts. I was like, are these thoughts mine? How could I be so violent to self? How could I be so say those things to self? And I realized that those weren't me. Those were a version of self that was created by the environment that I found myself in, by what they told me was normalized, by the culture, by the tradition, by the societal norms, values, like just how the environment shaped us, how the environment shaped me. In the previous episode, I spoke about the journey from the me self, the me version, that receiver outsourcing will from other people, to the journey of the I, which is the true self, and the me being in alignment with the true self. The idea being that the shadow self is that me self, and I is this true nature of self, right? I like to think about it like this. So we're born into this world, and we're born into certain environments, so systems, from the smallest system, the unit, the family, to school, environments that are created outside of school, third spaces, like just environments in general, the larger society, a community, a country, whatever the environment looks like. And that starts to tell this child what right is and what wrong is. That starts to tell this child what is okay to do and what isn't. And so in a way, the environment we find ourselves shapes us, it defines us. Imagine it as this version of self that is whole, and based off of the environment this self is found in, they start to take parts of it, up until what's left is a version that was shaped by this environment, a version that just feels so detached from self. And because it feels so detached from our true nature, we start to look at that as negative. We start to see that as a bad thing. And so this becomes our shadow self, the side we don't want to look at, we don't want to think about. And these are usually following really traumatic experiences, really defining experiences, really core wounding. And I'd like you to take a moment to go on this journey with me. This particular book that I read, and I'm going to put it up, it's The Inner Work. This particular book gives you the tea. Like, it takes everything apart. It shows you from that shadow self, the wounding associated with the shadow self. It shows you the systems behind these shadow attributes. They call it theme of consciousness. So the theme of consciousness essentially represents the lens, the perception of how you see the world based off the environment that has shaped you, right? In one way or the other, it starts to think about it like a filter of some sort. And in a way, it's a view that is based off your own perception. It's distorted in a way that it suits the narratives that you tell yourself. And so if you've thought that something was a bad thing all this while, of course, it will keep looking like a bad thing. This was one of my personal experiences. I used to be very judgmental, and so it was natural that I had negative self talk. So that means that I was judgmental to self, and I was in that same vein judgmental to everyone around me and in my environment. And so you see how the ways that you show up, because they were passed on to you, your environment imprinted that onto you. In return, you show up that way to yourself and show up that way to your environment right back. And so there's this reinforcement from the external world that is reinforcing the internal, and the internal starts to perceive things a certain way. Just you see that the cycle, right? So just as it's happening outside, it's happening on the inside, and so on and so forth. And that's just how life is. That's just how nature is. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So the depth with which you've met yourself, with anything, with love, with any emotion, with compassion, with understanding, the depth at which you've met yourself is the same vein that you can meet somebody else, because it's a learned skill. It's how you perceive things. So you've been able to amount to a certain degree of perceiving that emotion for yourself, and it starts with you, right? And it ripples from you. And that's why I like to think of this Bible scripture that says, love your neighbor as yourself. And that means that you have loved yourself first, and then you love your neighbor. So you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give what you do not first have. And you are your own, you as a person, a body, also gets to experience you as your soul self, right? Because it's this again, I self, soul self, observer self, spirit self, true self, that has this will and desire in life. But we also get to experience what it means to be in a relationship with these different things that we desire, right? You say you want to buy a car. What does the relationship between maintenance of the car and you look like? What is your relationship with discipline? What is your relationship with consistency? In a way, you get to interact with everything that is in your life first. So you are your own first receiver. Me. You are your own first receiver before anyone else receives from you. So just as much as you're able to meet yourself to that same depth, in that same vein, will you be able to meet someone else? So, that being said, we find ourselves in environments that creates these lens, these medium through which we perceive life. And understanding that just as we found ourselves in that environment and the people in the environment passed this on to us, that's how the people before them passed this on to them as well. And so it's just a cycle that keeps going on and on and on. And that's the first step to seeing yourself truly, is understanding that the sides of you that you don't want to look at, the sides of you that you're not proud of, the sides of you that you hide, merely a side of you that you've not shine light on, right? Those sides of you are not even you to begin with. And so you're able to show grace to yourself. Take a moment and show grace to yourself, because this wasn't even your struggle to begin with. This was put onto you, right? But just as much as you see it as a struggle, just as much as you see it as pain, there's also a flip side to seeing it. I like to think that nothing is inherently a good thing or a bad thing. It's just how you decide to see it. Because even the bad things, you get to learn from them. You get to learn what you do not like. Oh, bad feeling. Oh, I don't like this. That's information, that's insight. So is that really a bad thing? So because nothing is inherently bad or good, you're able to see that this pain, this struggle wasn't just that. It taught you something, it left you with a gift. And that's also something we're going to be looking into today. So, the themes of consciousness again are just lenses, how we perceive the world. You have varying degrees from rejection to true freedom and happiness. The first thing to meeting your shadow self is understanding that your shadow self is not, it's not something to be scared of. I know that sounds crazy, but stay with me. Realizing that your shadow self is merely a resultant effect of the environments that shaped you. And in reality, you did not have control over that. The family you were born into, the family dynamics you were born into, the schools that you went to, the school dynamics at play, the culture that you came from, and all these different things. When you start seeing it this way, that you just so found yourself in this environment because that was your journey. That was your journey. And these environments shaped you. These environment left these marks, these traumas, these wounding. And you had to figure out defense mechanisms to keep them at bay. The resultant effect of creating these defense mechanisms is coming from a place of wounding, is actions that are not in line with your true nature, that version of self that is directly connected to God, the I. It takes you away from that and it keeps you in the headspace of the wounding, these traumatic experiences. That is where you keep perceiving life from. And understanding that these wounding came about based on the environment you found yourself in. It was never yours to begin with, right? So, compassion, forgive yourself, grace, show yourself more love. That helps you see it differently. That helps you not take it too personally, right? And that's what the eye does. The eye observes these patterns, the eye observes these woundings, and is able to not attach to it, not feel like, oh, this is something that happened to me. Yes, it happened to you, but it wasn't your fault. It just so happened that those were the patterns that were being perpetuated in that environment that were normalized, right? And it didn't happen to you, it happened for you, because that is an opportunity to turn your pain into power, to learn the lessons that need to be learned and let it go, right? You you had to forget to remember. You had to feel the pain, to know the depth of that emotion, so that when you're on the other side, you know what peace feels like, you know what freedom feels like, because you felt in chains, then now you're free and it's like, ooh, you feel it. You feel it deeply, right? Because there's that contrast of emotion. So give the pain the credit it deserves. And there's always a lesson being learned. And we're going to see that at play today. I'm going to take us on that journey. There's always a lesson to learn. So there's always gold. There's always something to take out of that. So no, it didn't happen to you. It happened for you. And being able to stay in that mindset makes this journey less frictiony. First, understanding that your true nature was in its purest, unconditional loving form. And then you found yourself in these environments that shaped you into a certain version of self. And there are all these identities attached to this persona that was created from a place of wounding, from a place of confusion, from a place of rejection. And now is the opportunity to let all of that go. But first, you have to look at yourself. You have to look at your shadows. You can't keep running away from it forever, because in there lies all the gifts, all the beauty, all the purpose. Because you know your major pain points is that deep. Yeah, it's that deep. It's that personal. I knew what it felt like to be in mental chains. And so to be free mentally was such a breath of fresh air. And yeah, it's that deep. It is that deep. You got to give the pain its credit. There's none without the other. And that's life. It's a balance. How do you see it? How do you perceive it? So, yeah, I would take us on this journey and we would discuss these themes in details: the wounding, the painful parts, the hurtful stuff, the shadow that we don't want to see, we don't want to hear, we don't want whispers, that part. And then in the subsequent episodes, I would be talking about how from the shadow you get to start walking into the light, right? You start with accountability, your ease, your understanding, and then you go up and upward into the skill to finally freedom and unconditional love and all that good stuff. But yeah, so let's get it. I'll be referencing this book a lot, The Inner Work. So I'm just gonna put that up there. Yeah. Putting it in the description box. If you're interested, get yourself a copy. I highly recommend this book. Using this book, there were three practical steps that they used on how to take yourself from all that wounding, lower theme of consciousness, state of mind, traumatic wounding, to the freeing, freedom, unconditional love, authentic self. So, me to I. Great stuff. Now, the first step is awareness of thought. The second step is identifying root programs or root beliefs. And the final step is replacing it. So, the first step, awareness of thought. According to this book, they said you become aware of your thought, become the observer of your thought. That is the I. Try as much as possible not to take it personally, right? Do not attach yourself to the thing. Remember, it was your environment that passed this on to you, just as it was passed on to them. So, having this in mind, you have more compassion for self and others, because at the end of the day, we're all just a resultant effect of each other, right? Great. So, having that in mind, we're able to have compassion and understanding of self in that moment. When you have a trigger, you take the thought that passed through impersonally. You don't take it personally, you just observe it. And you ask yourself, what about this thing am I resisting? What about it is rubbing me off in a certain way? What about this thing just feels weird? Like, what are you resisting? Because the truth is, for every time you have a trigger, there is something going on there. There is a thought that is coming up in your head. There is an emotion that is felt. So, the flow that they made us see in this book is how your beliefs shape your thoughts, that shape your emotions, that affect your actions. So it's just, how do we show up, right? Again, the goal here is to live your best life, right? Right. With that in mind, it means moving closer to your desires. It means the things that you're doing, the ways that you're showing up are in line and in alignment with what you truly want to do, just because. And so the action is the key word here. Action is the key word here. That is the embodiment of us on earth. That is our imprint here. Action is the key word. But because action is surface level, it's easy to want to curb it on there. But what shapes the action at the end of the day is the belief system. And so that's why we first would observe our thoughts, be aware of our thoughts, because the thoughts are much more on the surface. And then when we go deeper, we are going to ask ourselves, oh, what is the root belief? What is the root program on here? What's going on? What narrative am I telling myself that I've held on to so strongly for so long that is showing up now? Again, there is an altercation in the moment between you and somebody, between you and something. There is an interaction, and something is triggering to you. In that moment, you ask yourself, what about this is rubbing me off in a certain way? What about this am I resisting? What about this just throws me off? You ask yourself, you answer. With that, you're able to think, extract these thoughts, and you become aware of them. Now, you take it a step further, you go deeper, and you ask, what narrative am I telling myself? Because now we want to identify the root program. What narrative am I telling myself that I have told myself for so long? What is the earliest memory of this thing, this encounter? So now you're tracing it back to way back when, because these are core programs, core beliefs that are put into us at such an early age. So being able to take yourself back to that point and identify what that story is helps you. You ask, what trauma is bringing me here? What triggers are bringing? You're able to go to your earliest memory of the thing, and it takes you back to that traumatic event. And then you start to see yourself. You start to see the shadow self. You start to become aware of the shadow self. And then you can ask yourself, do I want to keep perpetuating these patterns, or am I ready to release this? Because it's not even mine to begin with. Am I ready to release and replace with new root programs, with new belief systems, with new narratives that are loving and compassionate for us, that help us move forward in the journey? And this is not false, this is true, right? These new narratives are the truth. Whatever you choose to believe in is what is. You choose to believe the version of yourself, the stories that were told, the narratives that you had about yourself. And that's why you had been walking that path. Up until now, you realized that that wasn't yours to begin with. And so now you can start choosing the narrative that serves you, that serves your heart desires. You're able to see how this is your truth. You get to choose your truth. An example would be, so with the theme of rejection, the root program belief is I'm unlovable. And the thoughts related to that probably coming up, something happens and it's like, oh yeah, of course, I'm unlovable. That's why they don't want to talk to me. That's why they don't want to be around me. It's easy to jump into conclusion and act from that place. We're able to release that, knowing that, oh, this is from a past memory that has held me back. This was never mine to begin with. You release that and you can choose a new narrative. A new narrative like, I am innately loved. I am always unconditionally loved by God. Even though it doesn't feel that way, there is enough love to go around. And so you open up your heart, you open up your mind to the possibility that there is love all around. And you start to see love all around because now you're opening your mind to the love that has been there all along. Remember, I told you it's all about how you see things, it's all about the lens through which you see the world. And the lens you've been looking at the world through has been through those of wounded themes of consciousnesses, right? In my experience, those were the lenses that I was looking at the world through. So it was easy to jump into these conclusions because they existed to an extent. But there's also that choice of seeing the beauty, seeing the love that already exists. It's all around us, it's in nature, the beauty is all around. But once you start to open up your mind to the idea that these things do exist, these things are attainable, you do have choice, you have the will and the power to change the trajectory of your life. You have the will and the power to make conscious choices. You have God within. These things stop looking too far fetched and they start looking more attainable because they are. You just need to open up your mind. You need to try new things, try a different way of seeing things than you have been. So, yes, you have love within you. It may not seem that way, but you have love within you. You always have, and you always will. You just need to tap into it, just like everything else, right? But the more that you start to believe in these things, even though at first they may seem far fetched, they may seem like a lie, right? Because up until then, you've not been moving that way, you've not seen things from this perspective. But as you make conscious choices, make consistent efforts in this new direction, you would see you would see it for yourself, right? These kind of things, it's one thing for someone to tell you, it's another thing to experience it. So ultimately, you would see it play out for your own self. And then you start to use your own real life, tangible experiences to inform your new choices. So in this book, The Inner Work, they give us narratives to tell ourselves new narratives that we start to use to reprogram and in a way reparent ourselves, right? Understanding that the immediate environment we found ourselves may have shaped us in certain ways, but we get to choose how we want to be shaped now. So we're given new narratives as resources to start to look in a different direction. But I would say that you can use these narratives that they provide, and over time, based off your own lived experience, you start to see things for yourself, and the narrative becomes more peculiar to your situation. And that reaffirms it, that solidifies the narrative, that informs the narrative. At the end of the day, you want what is real for you, you want what is tangible for you, you want it to be you. Pick up this new lens that is just like, oh, okay, I love this filter. Exactly. The filter of love, unconditional love, freedom, happiness, all this great stuff. So, yeah, I would be taking us in depthly into the shadow side, into the wounding themes of consciousness. So this is like the victim mentality, abuser mentality, but essentially wounding, be it victim or abuser. So every wounding that is being discussed, and I would mention each of these. So you have rejection to judgment to overwhelm to loss to distrust to inadequacy to violation to insecurity. So these are nine wounding themes of consciousness, right? So these are nine like really traumatic